Have any of you heard that professional players play with really hard rackets? Do you know any of your friends that has bought a racket for this reason? What are the real differences between a hard racket and a soft one? Hello to all players, I'm Pablo and I welcome you to a new 4Set. It's true, almost every professional players play with a hard racket. But that doesn't mean that we amateur players should copy them. We can hurt ourselves and get injured if we don't use our rackets properly. Because rackets are like cars, not everyone needs a Ferrari, so not everyone needs a hard racket. Every racket on the market has its target, and today we are gonna understand it better. And remember to not rely everything on internet reviews because the weather affects on rackets. And I will explain this later in detail. But let's start with the 5 differences between hard rackets and soft rackets. The first difference is the power. We need to know that hard rackets are more powerful than soft rackets. The answer is called the trampoline effect. When hitting the ball with a hard racket, the rubber and the fibers do not sink as much as in a soft racket thanks to its stiffness. Therefore, the power of our arm will be transmitted to the ball in a better way in a hard racket. The trampoline effect affects soft rackets. When we hit the ball with a soft racket, the rubber and the fibers sink and absorb part of the force of the shot. In other words, if the speed of our arm is higher than the speed that the rubber and the fibers can have to recover their original position, our shot will lose power. A hard racket will allow the speed of my shot to be transferred to the ball more easily as the ball bounces off the racket. Whereas in a soft racket, the ball will get in the racket and lose power. Let me know in the comments if this trampoline effect is clear, and if not, I can help you there. And please, if you are learning something new, consider to subscribe to this channel because it's free. Time to move on to the second difference, that is the ball output. Ball output in a racket is not the same as power. Many people confuses these two terms, and actually there are so many reviews on internet that mix both terms. The ball output is the racket's help to gain speed on your shot on low intensity shots. A forehand, a backhand, a volley. Every shot where we don't need to use our maximum power is where the ball output makes the difference. And soft rackets will have higher ball output because of the trampoline effect. Earlier we have seen that when doing a smash, the trampoline effect on soft rackets reduces the speed of the shot. But now it will be the other way around. So imagine that to do a shot to a specific position on the court, you need 2 units of power of whatever scale we use. If we use a hard racket, we will have to add those 2 units of power because our racket will have no ball output. However, if we use a soft racket, we will need to add 1.5 units of power because our racket with its ball output will add the remaining 0.5 units of power. But why is that? As I said before, it's because the trampoline effect. Now the ball hits the rubber and the fiber, but it gains speed. This is called ball output, or in Spanish, salida de bola. But remember that it only happens in low intensity shots as the forehand or a backhand. And so we come to the third difference. Control. We can say that hard rackets have more control than soft rackets. And this has to do again with the ball output. Do you remember the example that I told you before of the 2 units of power? So the less help the racket gives us, the more control we will have. In a hard racket, we will have to add the 2 units of power necessary to put the ball where we want it to go. But in a soft racket, we have to take into account the power that the racket will add to the ball. And that sometimes is not easy. Have you ever missed a lob because the ball went straight to the glass, but you felt like you didn't add enough power for that result? The less the racket helps us to add speed to the ball, the more control we will have. Or using other words, the less ball output, the more control we will have. But is it true that using a hard racket we will need to have a proper technique? So I don't recommend at all for beginners to buy a hard racket. Let me know in the comments if this third difference about control is it clear or not. It's a bit complicated to explain it, but it's super important to understand it. The fourth difference between hard rackets and soft rackets is injuries. We can say that hard rackets are more harmful to our arms, but why? As I told you before, using a soft racket, the rubber and fibers sink, and by sinking they reduce the vibrations. But in a hard racket, all the vibrations go directly to the grip and from there to your hand and arm. If we use the example from before, how will you feel the vibrations more? Jumping on a trampoline or on the ground? Let's go to the fifth and last difference, that is the weather. Because all of us know that it's not the same to play paddle in summer or in winter. The warmer it is, the softer the rackets tend to be. And the colder it is, the harder the rackets tend to be. So for this reason, in summer we should play with a harder racket to compensate for the effect of the heat. While in winter we should play with a softer racket to compensate for the effect of the cold. So these are the 5 main differences between a hard racket and a soft one. So, with all this knowledge, why most of the pro players decided to play with a hard racket? It's all about control and power. They train around 4 hours every day, so obviously they have the power and technique to put the ball where they want. What they are looking for is a racket that transmits their intention to the ball the most realistic way possible, and that means using a hard racket. More veteran players like Fernando Velasteguin, for example, started playing with wood rackets that were way harder than today's hard racket, so their likes could have been influenced because of that. But in the other way around, players like Tapia, for example, is using a medium racket that gives him more comfort. Remember that to get advantage of a hard racket, you need to move it quickly or you will lose power compared to a soft racket. And for that, the best example is Arturo Coello, Tapia's partner for this season. He used a really hard racket and at the same time quite heavy, around 380 grams. But he moves the racket and have the strength enough to add speed to the ball. At the same time, Coello will have more difficulties to defend that Tapia because Arturo will need to hit the ball always with a perfect timing, so if you are starting playing paddle, don't get confused about this and try to look for a soft or medium racket as you will play better. Please, if you have any question, just leave it in the comments and I try my best to answer everyone. Don't forget 2 things, like this video and subscribe to the channel for much more content, and see you in the next video. Ciao!